So happy to have people here. Don't care.
Casual.
Yeah, no tie today.
Hey, you didn't come on.
What is tie?
Yeah. Get more ties in the audience.
Call the meeting.
Call a meeting, the LPA, for November 17th in attendance.
Scott Safford.
Jane Plummer.
Megan Heil.
Aaron Woodson.
Patrick Vanass.
All right. Thank you all for coming.
Excused absence.
Excuse absences are Forrest Krister and Anita Saracita. Everybody rise for the Pledge of Allegiance and the invocation. Please. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice. Please remain standing for a minute. Gathered today to make decisions for our community. May we use only our best skills and judgment, keeping ourselves impartial and neutral, as we consider the merits and pitfalls of each matter that is placed before us, and always act in accordance with what is best for our community and our fellow citizens. Amen. Sit down.
Okay.
All right. First item on the agenda is the approval of last month's meeting minutes. Do I hear any changes, edits? Scott, do you have anything on the last month's meeting minutes?
I do not.
Jane?
No, I appreciate being re-elected for vice
Congratulations.
when I was
on
on
your
vacation. Thank you.
Congratulations on your nomination to vice chair while you're on vacation. Patrick, you have anything?
No changes.
Aaron? I don't either. Do I hear a motion to approve the minutes from last month?
So moved.
Seconded.
All in
Jane
favor,
Plummer.
say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Minutes from last month are approved. First, we're going to open up the public hearings. Mr. Heron, do you want to swear in everybody who's going to testify today on any matter today in front of us? Please be sworn.
Stand up and raise your right hand. Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
All right, thank you.
Witnesses, and then, as always, as each item gets called, it would be appropriate for the members of the LPA to disclose any ex parte communications may have had with regard to that item.
Okay. I'm going to pause for a second and ask the townhouse. We have got two variances, it looks like the same property. Are these to be heard in together or separate? The 1250 Estero Boulevard Cocktail Lounge and also the parking piece today.
It's a Basic Green Community Development. There's a special exception request, which has to do with the use, and there's a variance related to technical requirements of the code.
Okay.
So they're two different applications.
Right.
However, I mean, once you get to it, the applicant can stand up. I believe they're going to ask for a continuance of both applications. So if you want to go through your process first. So.
Boulevard Bar and Cocktail Lounge, SEZ 202000103. Is there anybody from the applicant here to speak?
Good afternoon, Keith Long, Long Law on behalf of the applicant. Yes, as Mr. Green stated, unfortunately at this point in time, both of those matters, the applicant would request that continuance on both the special exception and the variance. There's some, it's been brought to our attention in the 11th hour that there's some more work that needs done on our end on the backside to bring you guys a more complete application. Request a continuance in order to do that.
Do you want to open any continuance, or would you prefer to have a date certain?
Would probably be open-ended at this. The holidays are coming up, so I know the scheduling is going to be difficult.
Oh, you have to do it to a date.
Yeah,
certain,
well, if it's an open continuance, then at the time that they inform us that they're ready to move forward, they would have to renotice and re-advertise in accordance with the code, as opposed to if we do it a date and time certain. That's the distinction between the two, and to the extent that they've requested an open-ended, then when they come, as I said, when they come back, we would coordinate with them, renoticing and re-advertising the public hearing.
Okay. Can we do them both at one time, or do we have to do them separately? Separate vote for each?
You have to deal with each one, and I think that I don't want to talk about the specifics because they've asked for a continuance.
I'm just asking, can we one time?
I'm sorry, for the continuance? No, you can continue both at the same time. as long as you read, both titles, but when you get to them substantively, you'll have to vote on them separately.
Okay.
Question for the town attorney. Would it be appropriate to provide a comment on the staff report, which might actually be helpful for staff and the applicant? Or should we just not have no?
I think that would, something that that if you have a comment, you can get together with Mr. Green,
Yeah.
and ask, maybe for clarification or amplification of a particular aspect of the staff report. And he can certainly take that into consideration as well as with the applicant, prior to it coming back to you all.
Okay. Do I hear a motion for continuance on both SEZ 202-00103 and variance 202-10100?
Moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Moving along.
Just for the public, we try to renotice everybody anyways, even if it was date certain, so that'll be done in this case also, whenever that date is decided.
Okay, thank you. Next, opening up for variance 202-10073, 6036-38 Estero Boulevard Pool Setback, variance 202-10073. Anyone from the applicant here to speak? Please come to the podium, state your name for the record.
Ex parte before.
Before you do that, do we have any ex parte communication that needs to be?
I've driven by the property several times.
I stopped by the property and spoke to a neighbor, and I didn't have anything to write it down with, and I don't remember his name, so I'm sorry, but I'll say what he told me.
I drove by the property.
Googled.
I have none. All right, now you may proceed.
Alrighty, Gary Foreman, I'm a local architect and structural engineer. I've been asked by the owner to represent him at the meeting, and I'm just here to answer questions if you've got any. It seems like it's pretty well taken care of in the report.
It is town. Tell us what's going on.
Coral Binge, Community Development.
Is the microphone working?
It shows it is. Yeah. Not hearing it good?
Turn it up a little bit. Or you're just a soft speaker, I
I
can't.
am. So well, since it's not up yet, we're here to talk about variance 2021-0073, and that's to allow an accessory structure, a pool, and for the principal structure within the street setbacks at 6036-38 Estero. The applicant brought the property in 2021. The principal structure was built in 1996. That's not. Permits from 1988 to 1995, with and it's currently zoned residential conservation. Again, the applicant is seeking a variance of 19 feet from table 34-3 setback to allow the pool within 6 feet of Shelby Lane. Just kind of give you a look, since you don't have a full aerial, this is a through lot. To the north is Estero, to the south is Shelby Lane, just kind of give you a visual. And you see here that they're looking for a variance for 34-3 to allow the pool to encroach that rear street setback of 25 feet. Our staff findings are found on page 2 and 3 of the staff report, and recommendations found on page 4 of the staff report. It's important to bring up that in between when we were doing the staff report and this presentation, we were contacted by Lee County. And apparently when they made the improvements to that area, they conditioned this property to have to have the driveway and the ability to turn around on the property so that they don't back out into Estero Boulevard. We weren't aware of this until Lee County reached out to us about it. And so basically, how we feel about it is if the applicant can provide us details showing that they can pull on the property, turn around, and still have room for the pool, we're okay with it. But unfortunately, we're kind of stuck to, until we see that design, we don't necessarily want to approve it because it is conditioned by Lee County. And
That condition hasn't been cleared up.
correct. It's kind of where we stand right now. And again, that was just brought up in between writing the staff report and literally the presentations.
It was in one of our reports I saw.
Yeah.
Can it be made as a condition?
Well, they need to address that stuff first before we feel comfortable moving forward with it. And what we've been told by the homeowner, or the applicant, was that currently the parking is in the rear. That's what the Lee County assessment was, so putting the pool there is taking the parking from the rear. I talked to the applicant themselves, and they said their new idea is to do all of the parking underneath with the turnaround in the front. Again, we're okay with that, but we just need to see it before we can feel comfortable moving forward.
Questions for town or the applicant?
How do we approve something that has a condition?
Are we,
I'm kind of,
are we
I'm
going to
wondering
do
the
the
same
same
thing, too.
thing?
There's a condition that hasn't been cleared up by Lee County. How can we even address this if it has to be cleared up by Lee County? And nobody seems to know where the parking is going to go. Yes, please. I think that's where,
You have to have a microphone.
you talk in the microphone and kind of point. We also have the plan in front of us too.
Well, where it says 65 feet on the front there, just to the left of that, there's a curb cut. It's provided in a new street. And there's about just under 40 feet from the property line to the front of the building. But proposed would be able to come in, make a left-hand turn, park parallel to the building, and then as you were going to pull out, you just back up, backwards, and then come back out that same curb cut. That's without going underneath the building. If we go underneath it, we'll have to make modifications for that. Adjacent property has already got that
Just
type of parking.
in wanting to address how we can approve this with a condition, we're recommending body, and it has to go to council. And we don't see why we can't recommend approval if we want to do so, based upon them meeting that condition, providing proof prior to going to council hearing.
Yeah, purpose of any conditions are to mitigate the impacts the project as being approved may have. And if the issue as presented of access and parking is a byproduct of the recommended approval, then certainly you can condition it. And it will then be up to the town council to decide whether or not they agree with that condition or not, in addition to whatever else staff may have recommended.
In your new plan, would you have to add more pavers, concrete, anything driveway to the front of this house?
There's no driveway at the front at the present.
You would have to add to this.
Yeah, but you're right.
Can he even meet the 67% impervious surface? If he has to add that kind of space to make a turnaround there.
So that is something that will have to be reviewed, is they have to, by creating that place in the front, they have to redo their impervious calculations, because they may be over, like you're mentioning, and would probably definitely need to do a drainage plan, assuming they're under the allowable.
I think it probably needs to go back to the town, and maybe to a date certain if you think that you can get that in a timely manner. Because the conversation I had with this person was that they had no problem with the pool or which way they came in and out, except that they were worried about the drainage, because right now the water from this location goes over the driveway to the next door and then goes down to a couple different lots down. And, because the driveway, you're supposed to contain it on your own property, but the drain for Estero Boulevard is on the next property next to them, and it goes over their driveway and then drains down to the ones further down the street from that.
There's potentially already a drainage issue on this property.
If you look at the map, it says that the total square footage for the pool is about, 495? So, that means they got 5 square feet of driveway before they'll need to do a drainage plan anyway. So it's going to require a new drainage plan if they do make these improvements.
This comes back to what was said in other meetings. These drainage plans are property whole. They're not section specific on this one. Can we condition that there's some sort of drainage plan on the back side of this? Because if you can retain the water in the front half of the house, you don't have to, the way the code's written, we don't have to, it doesn't matter about the back. Came up with a property a few months ago, that as long as there's an overall drainage plan, he can contain his what we calculate as his water, it's good to go, but it doesn't matter if it's flooding the back half of the street, is what I'm getting at.
I would say that, I mean, a drainage plan is the whole purpose of it is to keep the water on your property. So I think if there is like an excess of discharge, I mean, that's probably grounds for runoff that, addressed. I think a good drainage plan would keep all the property, or all the water on the property.
Question for staff. What we have before us is a setback variance. And when it comes to drainage plans, in that condition, isn't that a code requirement that they'll have to come forward with that and you guys review that? It's not in our purview today to assess the drainage plan, is it?
Right, we'll assess that once it's passed.
So, in my mind, the drainage plan and the requirement to have a drainage plan should not affect us hearing this and making a recommendation.
Yes and no, because if we grant this variance and create a bigger drainage issue,
If they don't meet the requirement, staff will just
they
deny
can build a
it.
retaining pond in that front yard and meet the drainage requirements.
I will defer to staff, but I believe that one of the standard conditions that staff has been recommending on literally, pretty much anything, is that the applicant has to meet stormwater requirements and other provisions of the code that otherwise apply. I don't want to speak for them, but that's my recollection.
The chair is correct. Jason Green, Community Development. The part of the issue is our code, specifically on residential, addresses volume. And so the point is, we look for it, and I've been looking for it for the years I've been here, because familiarity with that issue. You're supposed to put drainage in the low spot, but it doesn't always get done. And so there is a possibility, if it got missed, that they could put drainage to meet the requirements of the volume, not address low spot in the drainage, maybe on site. Those are hard for us to find and determine. You kind of rely on the engineer somewhat to do that. But if they provide a survey with topo, we see that that's the lowest point of the site. We should be catching that and saying, there's an issue there, we need to watch out, be careful what that runoff is. Also to Carl's point about the square footage of the pool, that currently is mostly, I think, rock and pavers or whatever in the back there now as a driveway. So it's not just that. It's when they switch that impervious to the front, they're probably going to have to remove portions in the back to be able to get under that 1%. But that's all, we do that. We do that all part of the building permit process. I don't know how to word it, to your point, Chair, if there's language about mitigating and being careful about the extra drainage in the back, addressing that, meaning that on site, we could come up with something, but.
We are running, if we
Don't wanna
grant this, is
pre-design
6
it?
feet from the 6 feet from the property line.
I don't want to pre-design it, because obviously they have to have an engineer that does it, but we understand your concern about that issue about the flooding in the back. Not flooding, but excess
Potential.
runoff. Potential runoff and excess runoff. Same time, they can't create a dam, right? You don't want to create a barrier to water that may be spilling over onto their property, coming from other places, because then that backs the water up to somebody else. And I don't know the conditions out here that's causing that. So that's something we can be aware of as part of this. Don't want to condition it that way.
How could we condition this to make, I'm struggling
We
with the 6
could
feet
not
from the
make
property
worse.
line, is piece of this. There's not a lot of room there.
Patrick, correct me if I don't want to use, I think we know the language, your pre and post development conditions should be, your post should not be worse than your pre. And that's generally when you design a site, bigger sites, single family, but bigger sites, that's what you're looking for, is try to not make it worse or improve it. That may be something that we can kind of use some language similar to that, to address that, or at least be the red flag for us to look for that as a reminder.
And I think we need to be careful with existing lots and existing developments and improvements on a property. This idea of containing all your water and being able to berm it and manage it like a brand new greenfield development is not completely accurate in a redevelopment scenario. again, we have to look at precondition, post-conditions, and you may not be able to completely hold your water on site and manage it. You have to improve the conditions compared to what they are today.
Right, and the standard is the 1 inch or 1.5 inch. One and a half being on waterfront and 1 inch being all other lots, and that is not retaining all your water on site. I mean, the reality is when you have a 25-year or 100-year storm event, they're anywhere, I think anywhere between 6 and 12 inches of rain. So the reality is it's doing something, it's trying to correct something that was causing runoff and additional slopes, but it is not holding all the water point. But we definitely can look at making sure the post-development worse, or tell the engineer to make sure that they're signing and sealing that it's not worse than the pre.
So I have a question, because on the plan, I'm assuming right now it's all concrete or gravel or whatever, but after they put the pool in, it says artificial turf, sand subbase. That count as permeable?
We have not analyzed what that is. That obviously depends on material, ratings of that material. Certain materials have different capacities. There's underground systems that can be created for storage and create that capacity, and they use stone and sand. We have not reviewed that specifically. That would be part of the engineer. I do have some experience with some of those turfs, and they're all different. Some of them allow permeability. Some of them I've seen drains put in the yards. They claim to be permeable, but they're really not. The drains end up off somewhere else. The water goes somewhere. It's just concentrated. So it depends on what products they use and what the end. Ideally, yes, it would be restoring some of that to some level of permeability. I think they're going to have to, just eyeballing the percentage, especially if you're going to make multiple cars able to turn around the front to be able to forward, pull out forward. We're just trying to be respectful of the Lee County requirements and future conditions.
So I have a question. Obviously, this is a vacation home. How many bedrooms is the house? And what's usually the typical occupancy? Do you know?
You need to speak in the microphone.
I don't know, it's either a 2 or 3 bedroom.
Okay, so the question going back to the parking is Lee County asking for enough cars to park and turn around 4 cars or 2 cars, or do you know?
Cars were mentioned.
If it's a 3-bedroom house and vacation home, there'll probably be more than 2
Well,
cars.
it may be 2-bed. Like I said, I don't know how many bedrooms are in it. Also, if I may, it sounds like the concerns are all permitting problems. I think if we can get past that and approve the concept, then we can go to the next step and have a civil engineer take a look at the drainage and that kind of thing.
For either applicant or to, anyone have any other questions? Either side? Okay, I'm going to close this portion and open up the public comment section. Anyone here to speak? Closing public comment.
Before you embark, did you all disclose any ex parte?
Yes, we did.
I'm sorry.
We were talking to whomever sitting over there while we did it. Go ahead.
That's right. Just making sure.
All right. We close the public hearing. Do I hear a motion?
Before we make a motion, can I bring up one issue that I'd forgotten here on the conditions, but I'd just like to bring that up for discussion. Condition number 5, last sentence, says alterations or substantial damage to either structure render their respective variance to be null and void. And I think some conditions like this have come up before, where we didn't necessarily support that as a group. I don't see why an issue related to the structure 5-10 years down the line will nullify your variance for a setback. I think they're two separate issues. We have mechanisms to deal with maintenance of structures and condition of structures. And I don't see how that should affect setback variance.
What was the town's intent on that one?
Green community development, it's probably poor terminology. The intent was with things like a pool, if they get destroyed and you have to replace them, that they would come for another variance because it's a development. So I don't think we intended it to apply on the rural version of the structure, so that's for that. We've suggested that in some, and I think you're right, you have modified some of those. But it is, the thing that you're asking for the variance for, location and setback of the pool, if it gets destroyed, then not a blanket variance for the property forever. That the individual development that has to be done is on its own.
If we rephrase it to this variance only applies to this, the pool that they're presenting to us today.
So
They
yes,
change the pool in the future or build something else, the variance.
that was my intent. I apologize for
apply.
that confusion. The
Okay.
intent is only is to apply to the part that requires the variance.
I'm okay with that. That makes sense to me.
We can think structure or the pool, replacing that structure's term with pool is fine also.
On that line of conditions, I think we also, right now I'm not wanting to say yes to this with this Lee County thing lingering out here but what if we conditioned it that has to be cleaned up and improved before any building permits or anything is issued on this property?
Well, it has to be complied with, so that's the intent of the condition. So
There's not a condition in these 5 conditions that says that.
Need to add it.
We need to add it.
We need to add that Lee County one.
what I'm saying is they can't get a permit unless they comply with the regulations. And
There's no condition that refers to Lee County at all.
so the turning around of the 2 or more vehicles is specifically is what you want to condition that.
I want a condition that they clean this up and they get this thing with Lee County cleaned up before we go issuing any more ability to build and change and make changes to the property. And that was first and foremost in the line of things that he's already asked for from somebody. They gave it to him,
We're
but he
trying
hasn't
to
cleaned it.
find that balance between not making them engineer the site prior to getting a variance approval. We're always trying to be cautious of that. So if you're talking about proving that they can do it versus putting language in there that they have to be in compliance with Lee County, I think those are 2 different things. I hesitate with go design it and show us, and then we'll approve the variance, just because people usually do that.
I wasn't saying approve or disapprove the variance. Right now, I'll vote it down because there's not anything in here that says he has to go clean that up before we issue a building permit on this property.
Cleaning that up would be in compliance to have 2 vehicles be able to make the turning movement or whatever language is required by Lee County, making that part of our permit process.
Prior to building permit, so they could get the variance, but the
Correct.
condition is prior to building permit.
Correct. So yes, I understand. Yes, that's what I would suggest.
Okay.
That's fine.
How does everybody feel about that condition?
That works.
Because
Without it, I'm not,
I understand, I can accept that, and I do feel that there is a drainage issue, so I think that needs to be.
So that would be a second condition you may want to add, which is require them to evaluate the posting versus pre and post development.
okay, so condition 6 would be before building permits are issued. Pool. County,
I would say compliance with any Lee
Fine.
County driveway requirements. Normally, they would be applying for a driveway after after all this, and since they already got it. That's a good point.
and then 7 would be evaluate pre and post
Drainage conditions.
drainage conditions.
I'd say, can I add to that to ensure same or improved condition?
Any changes to that, to the wording of 5, Patrick?
Happy leaving it up to staff, but just staff clarifying that, variance applies to this specific pool presented as part of the variance. The pool be altered or changed in the future to come back and test variance once again.
I'd say that though in the first sentence, the variances shall only apply to the pool as shown on the provided site plan.
And I guess the rest, maybe if we just struck out the rest, or just somewhat modified the second sentence.
Yeah, the structures part, I think.
Yeah.
Other discussion on this? Any changes? Patients? Good? Like me to do the motion? Or
Since
have
you
the
wrote it
notes?
down, go for it.
Did I take the notes? Okay. I am recommending approval for variance 202-10073 for 603638 Estera Boulevard, pool setback. With the conditions set by conditions of approval on page 67 of our packet, with the addition of a 6th condition before building permits to be issued for this pool, proof of compliance with Lee County and driveway. And condition 7, an evaluation of pre and post drainage conditions to ensure same or improved conditions.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Passes 5-0 with the conditions. All right, moving along. Opening the public hearing for LDC section 34-638, minimum setbacks for large homes and lots. Recommend approval, deny, recommend amendments to the land development code section 34-638, minimum setbacks, and table 34-3. This is administrative. Thank you. Thank you.
Oh my gosh. Should've brought glasses.
How'd I get glasses on?
Got mine on. Town is here.
Good afternoon. Sarah Prost with Community Development. Town Council adopted a zoning in progress resolution 2142 to consider amending the LDC relating to consolidation of multiple lots and the development of houses that are of a larger scale than those in the existing neighborhoods. These new developments have the potential to impact the character and the views within the neighborhood. Staff is recommending 2 separate options to address these concerns. First is the option to require additional side setbacks for lots that are 80 feet wide or more. The recommendation is for a side setback equaling 15% of the lot size. The percentage is based upon the existing required side setback of 7.5 feet on a typical 50-foot wide lot. On an 80-foot wide lot, that would be a 12-foot side setback. I have an example here. This one is over 80 feet. This one I'm showing is 150 feet. I'm showing what a current lot, what 3 lots, 50-foot wide lots would have right now, 7.5 feet. And then that's essentially 15% of that 50-foot wide lot. Then you combine those and we're still requiring a 15% side setback. So that's 22.5 feet on a 150-foot wide lot. So here are some additional examples showing what that would look like with different sized lots, what that 15% would be. On a 170-foot wide lot, that would be a 25.5-foot side setback, which would leave you 119 feet to build. And then on a 140-foot lot, 21 feet side setbacks. The second recommended change would require additional front setbacks for houses exceeding 65 feet in length and a height limit on 20% of the building built to the front setback. This change would allow 65 feet of facade to be built to the 25-foot street setback, and of that 65 feet built to the front setback, 20% of that can only be one living level. 80% of the 65 feet, which would be 52 feet max, would be two living levels over parking. Any additional house length over the 65 feet would be set back an additional 12 feet for a 37-foot front setback. Change would break up the massing of the house, of houses that exceed 65 feet in length, which would decrease the visual impact on the right-of-way and nearby properties. In addition to that, staff is also recommending the changes shown in the strike-through underline that I gave you guys. It would be on page 92 of the packet. It's in table 34-3 dimensional regulations. The note 6 currently says single-family and two-family homes on waterfront lots in the RM zoning district must maintain only a 7.5-foot side setback. Staff recommends the removal of on waterfront lots. This phrase has caused some issues because it requires single-family and two-family homes not on waterfront lots to provide the 20-foot side setback, and staff does not believe that that was the intent of the ordinance.
Say that again, you're taking that water setback out?
Currently, it says waterfront lots in the RM zoning district. But that should apply to all single-family and two-family homes in the RM district, not just those that are on waterfront lots. So essentially, the way this is written, if you have an inland lot that's zoned RM, you would be required to have a 20-foot side setback, even if it's a single-family dwelling, which we don't believe was the intent of the ordinance. We're not sure exactly why that on waterfront lots was maintained in there, because we believe that it was the intent for single-family and two-family lots in the RM district to provide the same setbacks as other single-family and two-family lots on the island. Because RC and RS zoning districts require a 7.5-foot side setback, so it would be very strange for single-family homes to then have to provide a 20-foot side setback because they're zoned RM inland lot. Available for any other questions you may have. And I also have some additional, so in the discussion about the building massing. So this is an aerial view of what that would look like. And then I did sort of a front view so that you can see the orange part would be the part that was at the 25-foot setback, and the blue part is the rest of the house that would be set back 37 feet from the right-of-way instead of the 25. It's just to show sort of a front view and what that 80% at the full height of the house would look like and what that differentiation was for the massing. So instead of having smaller block and a bigger block, have some additional differences. Another way that that could be set up with the facade broken up.
What kind of response have you had from builders at all?
I haven't had the opportunity to go through any of this with them. I wanted to talk with you guys and find out if this was the direction. This is what I heard when we had the discussion at the joint session. I wanted to see if it seemed like this was the direction you really wanted to go before I went out and started talking to developers and builders about how they would accomplish this. Does this seem reasonable and the direction that you were intending?
I believe so.
We spent a couple hours talking about it, and what came out of that couple-hour conversation.
I had a few questions. Just for consistency in terminology, there's reference to width of buildings and there's reference to length greater than 65 at the front. We just use width throughout. I think that's kind of the accepted term and what we use elsewhere. Just would avoid confusion. And then, with regards to the one-story, break up the massing. Would the need to go one story beyond the 65 feet only be for 12 feet deep? Or would it be entire depth of the building?
The intent was only to apply it to that 12 feet deep.
Only to that 12, so you could have like an entrance feature or some kind of,
Or if you wanted to have parking and then the balcony area over it, or,
so I think the way it's written, that I need to be clarified, that it's one story where we have that, that breakup in the facade, we have the additional setback
Okay.
to 12 foot depth. And then, in looking at the language on page 91 of 99, look at the 6C, the exemption associated with people minimizing the amount of closure at the ground level. It reads, it's kind of confusing when I read it, and I don't know if other people find it confusing, but I had some suggested language that I'd simplify it a little bit. So I was thinking that maybe the way to rephrase this was a residential structure greater than 65 feet in width will be exempt from the additional setback requirements, and then refer to whatever code section that is. If the ground level enclosure or screened area is limited to no more than 650 feet and 30 feet in width as viewed from the right of way.
okay?
I can provide that to you.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I was gonna write it down and I thought, no, I better just listen, so
Okay.
I'm thinking about it. Yeah, if you could provide that to me, that would be great.
Will you do that again? Please.
Talking about C,
Yeah.
Yes. So if you guys look at C right now,
Yeah.
I'll let you read it yourself, but it's a little confusing to me the way it's written.
The way I read that was no more than 30 feet wide, maximum 650 square feet total.
I'm just rephrasing the way it's written.
Okay.
Thinking the same thing.
All right. Okay.
I apologize, I failed to cover the exemption discussion, and did anyone have any questions about?
No, because we covered that quite extensively in the other meeting. What our intent was for this,
So
if anybody takes them up on it.
going back to the one-story portion, that would be under 5.2. Maybe that's where you can, 5A2, where you can elaborate that it only applies to that 12-foot setback portion of it.
Anything else? Do you have anything?
Good, thank you.
I'm impressed you got this done so fast and so well. Sarah?
Well, it's one of those things that if you don't start working on it immediately after the meeting, you don't remember what was discussed at the meeting, so.
Fantastic job.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
I guess at this point, we need to vote to recommend it with changes at this point, or a motion. Do I hear a motion?
Patrick do it since he had the changes.
Do I hear a motion?
Yes, motion to approve staff presented changes to, LGC section, let me out here, what section are we looking at here?
34-3
34-638
and 34-3 with the table.
and table 34-3 associated with setbacks for large residential structures, with the request to change terminology, when referencing the length of the building and calling it width consistently throughout. Clarifying 5A2 associated with the portion of the building that has to be 1 story, that it is only limited to the additional setback requirement. And 6B, rephrasing the exemption language, and I will provide that language to staff.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. All right, been for recommend, oh, I need to open up for public hearing, public comment. Before we took that vote, there is no one here, open, closing it. How do we have to revote? Have to redo it?
I would,
Okay. My bad, I forgot the public hearing because there's nobody
no,
here.
there's the council. Ordinances,
Patrick has to repeat.
Yes. No? Did we say no now?
I sure hope not.
Does he have to repeat that? And we have to revote on that? Because I screwed up with the public hearing portion of that?
no,
Okay.
it's the motion as previously presented, is.
All those in
yes or no?
favor of.
All in favor?
All
Aye.
in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Passes 5-0 with the recommended change for recommendation.
I probably won't want to take this unless directed by administration or council. I probably won't want to take this to council next month because I'd like to have some additional time for vetting between the meetings since this is the direction you're interested.
Okay. It's fine with us. I mean, it's council's time frame.
Unless we're directed by council that they would like to see it sooner, we just.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, I'm closing the public hearings and opening up the administrative agenda. OPM member items. Anything?
It'll be a great boat parade on Saturday, December 4th.
December 4th?
I have nothing.
Next council meeting, do we have anything on the next council meeting?
Green Community Development, yeah, there'll be a couple things. One thing that I just want to bring to your attention that hasn't been discussed really publicly yet, so maybe it's a bad time to bring it up, is we are required to make some changes to our flood ordinance, and they're going to have to occur pretty quickly, so we'll be bringing that back before you for review. It will either be December or January. Part of mostly what we want to do is be able to get out to the community first and vet it with impacted people, impacted properties, because it's a big change to mobile homes. In that they don't have an exemption anymore in order for us to qualify for higher ranking in CR. So that's going to be something that the community and the council will have to decide on whether which one's more important, to have a discount, higher discount on their insurance, and to implement new regulations, or not implement those new regulations and that discount. That'll be a community discussion, and it was a pretty big surprise. Unfortunately, it's what they call a prerequisite is to meet, I don't know if any of you are familiar with the CRS rankings, but they go from 10 to 1. We were recently awarded a 5 because of our good work, but it's a prerequisite to even get an 8. The higher the number, the lower the discount. So, that's something we're going to reach out to mobile home communities, neighborhoods on the island, and explain to them what the impact we go any further. But we're in a short order in the next 6 months or so that we have to get it adopted if we're going to audit come. You're going to hear probably, it's going to turn into probably something big deal. Just want to let you be aware of it. So if you start hearing things, feel free to direct people to me and Kristen, who's working with our floodplain stuff, to address those issues.
That's only on the island, not San Carlos Island?
Well, all communities are being directed to amend their ordinances to remove the exception, I guess I should call it. Under previous or current regulations, if you have a mobile home, you're only required, I'm going to get the numbers wrong, but you're required to elevate it to a certain amount, like 3 or 4 feet above grade, unless it's been flood damaged. And any of the homes that have been flood damaged, when they get replaced, or 50% substantial improvement, have to then meet the elevations, which obviously with some of the mobile home lots, right, for access, that might be an issue. This removes that, requires all replacement and substantial improvements to be elevated. Right, so the problem with that is it's an easy discussion to have if it doesn't have a big financial impact on the community. It's got a huge impact on the CRS rating. In order to get to an 8, 7 or 6, or to the 5 that we're at, you have to make this. You have to make it before our audit, which is coming up sometime in 2022. So I think it's important to start the conversation, and we're going to reach out before we go into more. I didn't want to go into too many details. I just wanted you to know that may be coming pretty quick, and so we'll try to update you as much as we can about the community input, but it may become a very hot topic.
Question, may I?
But it's important for us to reach out to the properties and work with those directly, one-on-one, and tell them, try to explain to them what this means.
It was my understanding when we discussed this way back when we moved the 50% rule to being able to be renewed every year or at permit to permit, that we could not reach those higher standards because we don't have land that's required to be green space that would qualify us to move any higher than where we were.
No, there's a variety of ways to get points. One of the, I guess I'll say, easier ways, communities like counties, larger areas that have large tracts of reserved areas, that usually have, whether it's a state or national forest in it, or big plots of preservation lands, they have an easier time meeting higher points for open space. Cities and towns generally don't. They don't have as much land available to that. So that is a good way to get points in some of the categories, but there's other ways to get points. For example, you mentioned the 50%. If you're less than 50%, you get more points. And say 40 or 30, if you're 49%, 40. So that's one thing we're going to have to bring back at some point also, is to have that discussion. Do we lower that percentage in order to get additional points? But some of that evaluation is based on where you're at. So we got to a 5, which was pretty substantial, considering we don't have available to us open space additional, and considering we went to a 50%. Now we're going to lose some things. We said that when we went to the 5. We told the council that that's the decision now, at least temporarily. We go to a 5. We'll try to fight to keep it. But the reality is when they change the CRS manual, the community rating system manual, it's going to take things away and add things, and so how we get points changes. We know ahead of time we were going to lose some points in some areas, but we want to look at gaining them back. That's always the goal, is to try to maintain. We don't know if we're going to be able to maintain a 5, but an 8 or a 9, I should say, is pretty substantial. A 9, basically every community in Florida, because of the Florida Building Code, qualifies for a 9 if they participate in the CRS. That's the difference between a 5 is you work your butt off and do good things and manage properties and make sure things are safe. That's a big difference between the two.
More asking along the lines on December 6th is, it's on the agenda, so do we need to assign somebody to come?
So we're going to try to get the variance on to get them out and done before the end of the new year. Otherwise, it's wait till January for the town council meeting. Other than that's the only thing we have here. I'm trying to think what we had. We covered the other ones at the last one. So the council meeting, that's it. That's all that'll be before them, unless directed for the text amendment to.
Can anybody make that December 6th meeting?
Cannot, nor can I make the 14th. Excuse that.
I'm in the same situation.
Vacation.
Meeting there. I mean,
Do your spouses know that you're going someplace together?
I just,
Never mind.
They're going with us.
Yeah. They're squashing our fun.
everybody else has to be here on that day, or we have to move it. That would be our quorum if the third person is out.
What day? Who else is out?
14th?
If anybody goes out,
It's on my calendar.
November
14th.
14th?
I'll hurt my feelings if you move it.
I will be here. I can make it.
I think I will be too. I don't think I have a problem.
I would, at this point, send out Jason a meeting, just make sure everyone else will be here on the 14th, because we have 2 that we're gonna excuse already. If the 3rd, then we have to move it.
But we'll do that to confirm, and I'll also be diligent in our scheduling. And you know what I mean by that.
I get it.
If it's not ready, it's not gonna go, and
All right.
So we're going with the 14th, not the 6th, is that correct, or what are we doing?
No, the 6th is the town council meeting. I'm trying to see if somebody can go and
okay.
sit in case they have any questions. 9 times out of 10, they don't have questions of us or need us per se, but
I wasn't at that meeting, so I'm not sure that I would be a good person to.
I will do my best to be there unless Forrest or Anita can make it. Okay. I don't have anything else on my items. Do you have more to, I mean, you're up next anyways.
I do have a question on meetings, though.
Yeah.
Is there usually, like, starting with January, is there usually a certain day and time we
Yes.
meet?
Typically.
So this is
Tuesday at 9 a.m.
second Tuesday at 9 a.m. Okay.
And it does get towards the end of the year a little cattywampus just because, again,
Holidays.
September, November, December, January, those are usually the months that, those are months where like the council has moved their meeting in January instead of being on the
it's the
4th.
14th still, unless,
Because it's really
Yeah,
complicated
otherwise
to come
one of
back
these two
or
can't come.
during the holidays to produce stuff. They've
Remember
made it on the week later, so that's the day before your LPA meeting. Always makes it fun for us, but,
Usually second Tuesday.
second
9
Tuesday at
a.m.
9 a.m.
Tuesday, 9 o'clock.
No, you haven't had one yet, but
Put up here at 9 this morning.
did you?
I
Today is Wednesday anyways.
didn't read the cover page where it showed the time. I just assumed.
I'm just glad we had the time right.
In our meeting, in our note back out to us about the reschedule said 2 o'clock, so I had to read the paper. Okay, so you're gonna send that email and make sure these 2 can make it. I point to these 2 empty chairs. Make sure we can have it on the 14th. I'll try to make it the 6th. Anything else for community development?
No, I don't believe so, and I'll tell you next month.
I have a quick question on your comment about the flood stuff. Well, not comment on it, but it kind of reminded me. We have pointed out in a couple of meetings that the way our drainage stuff is worded, we have a problem.
Which, do you mean for
The
the?
fact that we look at volume and not placement and we not ask for a pre and post, we may have created a problem on that property today. with
So,
us.
just remember that what you're talking about, the criteria of the 1 inch versus in the 1.5, is specific in this town to single-family lots. Because in most places, those platted and developed lots are being redeveloped are exempt. So in 2017, the town created this new requirement, where other drainage, new development has drainage requirements in the town, and they have to meet standards at district level and state requirement.
I guess the question is, should we be looking at that so that we don't start, I mean, if it's not brought up like we did today, and start looking at this in pre and post, then we could start creating issues. I mean, this is the second case in a matter of 3 months that has been like this. Is this something that we can address in a code change, or are we just going to have to look at this every time?
So we've been notified that supposedly the new flood maps are going to be brought to us, finalized and brought to us in 2022. Thought they were going to be 2021. I don't know what happened to their schedule, but the FEMA schedule is supposedly sometime in 2022. We need to update and modify our flood ordinances in relation to those and think about the things that the vice chair was commenting on, which way are we going to go as a community? But also because of the change in A's and V's and all that, it affects how development occurs on the island. But to that point, there's other things that go with it, like drainage issues. They're not directly tied to flood regulations, but they do end up working together. That's a choice of policy to go in a direction of more regulation on the drainage issues. Also, the school thought you could say less regulation, but less fill, less regrading, less those types of things to try to avoid impacts created by development on a site.
And I
It
think
doesn't fix problems that are there, but we're supposed to be doing some of that, I think, along with the town's already doing, drainage in the.
I'm asking a question because if it's not brought up, it's not thought about a lot of times. And when we're sitting here talking about these variances and allowing them to move things closer and closer to property lines, streets, there's an unintended consequence to that, and I didn't know if there's some way to address this permanently, that it doesn't need to be addressed in this room every time.
I think well, I don't want to say my idea and preference was to move the other direction, which is to kind of get rid of that biggest conflict point about the drainage plans and the cost. Then the trade-off to that might not be acceptable to certain development. So those are the things we're gonna have to weigh about the fill. But again, I'll go on, I've said it to any one of you that's talked to me about it. The 1 inch and the 1.5 inch requirement addressed part of the issue. It didn't address the full issue, which is slopes and pushing water off and fill and all that kind of stuff to other properties. It didn't fully address that. Other ways to address that.
And nor can we fully address that without a master plan drainage system for neighborhoods. You know, my neighborhood, for example, a bit of a fishbowl. And even if we were to put swales in our backyards and all agreed to that, we don't have a positive outfall in the canals. The only way we could do it is through a pump system. And we could come up with all the rules, but unless the town puts in that infrastructure, we're not gonna get there. So
Right, and
we
the town
have
is
to be
putting in
careful with that, yeah.
And the town is putting in infrastructure, but, and to your point also is, some people want to fill to then get above the street, so that's not draining off into their property. But then you have your neighbor that's already built, they're gonna stay in the bottom of the fishbowl. So those are things we have to consider. But we're looking to try to reduce conflict points with development. If we can speed reviews up, that would be great, and have a positive trade-off on the regulations, on the community. But there's give and take on both those.
Still, at the end of this conversation, don't know if we can or can't do it, or if we should or shouldn't do it.
I don't either. That's why it's going to be a conversation point of what's the pros and cons to each side. I don't think what we're doing addresses 100% of what the intent is to address. You can go either direction to address.
I guess my thing with this one and the one that was on that one that is almost a zero lot line situation is that we make the situation worse, and I don't think anybody wants to make the situation worse.
And you don't know a lot of that, unfortunately, you don't know a lot of that information when you're making those choices in the variance because it hasn't been engineered yet. You don't have topo. Some of those are interesting. We don't have the answer. I know there's solutions, but depends on what people want to give up and get. Some of that will be coming before you in 22, for sure.
Okay. Anything for us? Anything else?
I think it's something positive to talk. I think all that's positive. All that's positive.
All that's positive.
Moving the town in a positive way. Oh, that's it. I just happy Thanksgiving and trying to move forward with stuff that you guys their way.
Mr. Heron, do you have anything for us?
Nothing other than happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
Kind of covered items for next month's agenda in our conversation just now. I'll open it up for the final public comment. Here, closing public comment.
Where'd our suits go?
I know, we had 6 suits in here, they're all gone. All right, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Yeah.
All in favor, say aye.
Hi.
We're adjourned at 2:04.